much. Senator Wu.
Yes, good morning to witnesses. I wanted to make the connection between soil health and the oil and gas industry, and for that reason, this question is probably best directed to Mr. Wallace. The connection, of course, is through the manufacture of fertilizer, particularly nitrogen-based fertilizers, ammonia and urea, which are problematic for all the reasons that this committee has discussed over many months. But I wonder if Mr. Wallace can comment on progress in development of slow-release nitrogen fertilizers, particularly oxamide-based fertilizers, which are high efficiency, less water-soluble, and ultimately better both for the soil as well as for the environment.
Yes, we've done a lot of work, not just on the slow-release fertilizers, but on the use of some inhibitors that help us with our fertilizer products to not only just change their impacts, but make our efficient use of them better, so we can reduce the volume we're using and or reduce emissions coming from them. We've also changed how long that fertilizer is available to the crop, instead of being all available right away and at greater risk of being lost or causing damage to the crop, which is the downside of it. We can actually spread that out longer into the season, get the plants using it more, and result in better yields. We've also, not just with manipulating the fertilizer, we've seen a lot of changes in how the technology and how we can put that fertilizer on in season. And the same thing goes with our manure management. Coming from a province with a lot of livestock, I'd be remiss not to mention how we manage our manure. Same way with some inhibitors and improved application right up into standing crop that reduces risks of loss, reduces impacts, and gives us a greater not only yield boost, but benefits to the soil. So yes, there has been a lot of technologies, and we moved, a light years ahead on how we used to fertilize to what we're doing today.
Comment on the state of the technology vis-a-vis world standards and the potential for best-in-class slow-release nitrogen fertilizers from Canada, Alberta in particular, being available and used worldwide, because this is a worldwide problem, of course.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work in the companies providing fertilizer products in Alberta. Have done a ton of research. We have a lot of experts that are used around the world on how we can deliver and improve our fertilizer delivery technologies between here, United States, Europe, and Asia. It's been fantastic to see, and a lot of that work was started here between not just companies, but Ag Canada, Alberta Agriculture, back in the days when we did this fertilizer work and saw where we can utilize it to not only improve our yields and our production benefits, but reduce our environmental impacts and then eventually our carbon footprints, because how we're doing a better job of managing it, reducing the volumes, reducing our emissions. And a lot of that came out of the prairie provinces with work out of Jeff Shano, Ross McKenzie down in Southern Alberta, Regis Karamatis, and the list goes on. International Plant Nutrition Network. We've been really proud of what we've achieved coming out of Canada. We need to be the technologies, not only the ones with specific to fertilizer, but even the equipment ones between North America and the rest of the world. We've had a lot of advances in how we manage our resources here. Our farmers have been very beneficial, have benefited greatly on the investments made by government.
Thank you.
You have 3 more minutes if you have other questions.
I don't need it. Witnesses want to comment?
No, I think Trevor covered that very well. I guess the one thing that I would add too, because I know you mentioned slow-release fertilizers and different technologies. There's been a lot of kind of on-the-ground research on the use of and trying to figure out how to best utilize the technology. So what are the nitrogen emissions reductions we see from it, but what is the practical stand of how we can, apply or use the fertilizer technology in the field? One of the cautions when it comes to things like slow release is that we want to make sure that the release is still fast enough that it gets into the crop at the time that it's seeded. And so that is one of the things that we have to think about too. So there are some very interesting technologies. Trevor mentioned the, inhibitors. They are kind of a shorter time frame versus some of the polymer-coated ureas and things like that we have to be able to slow that release out to the crop. But you can actually run into problems if you don't use a slow release appropriately, because then you start having the release after the crop has stopped growing, and then that can also cause additional issues later. So there's some very good work being done in this, and obviously there's a lot of interest right now when it comes to nitrogen reduction emissions on furthering kind of the use of these different types of products.
If I have a minute or two left,
do.
if I could just go back to Mr. Wallace to ask him to talk specifically about the collaboration between the oil and gas industry and the agriculture, soil industry, farm industry, because both industries are in profound transition, oil and gas in particular, and whether there's an active thinking around how oil and gas can provide a solution, if you will, to some very profound farming challenges, not just in Canada, but around the world.
Don't think I am qualified to comment on that. I'm sorry, Senator. From the oil and gas industry, my interactions with them are usually on the reclamation, soil improvement side of the world, not so much on their contributions towards collaborations. But the one comment I can make, a lot of the advancements we've made in oil and gas, or you can even say space exploration, eventually trickle down and benefit Canadian producers. Things that are economical in the high value industries eventually get cheaper. And eventually, we look with our GPS and our high-end technologies that we're using in farming, they started in other industries and moved down. So from a technology point of view, the advancements they make eventually benefit us.
Talking about fertilizer, of course, which is directly a product of that industry, but that may be a different committee discussion.
Thank you very much.